Games, no gimmicks. The Sheeler Motor Mile. Now in Christiansburg, Radford, and Pulaski. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Springtime is AC tune-up time, and all it takes is one call to Terrell E. Mosley to get your system ready to roll. And their tune-ups come with a guarantee that if you have a breakdown, they'll credit the entire cost of the tune-up toward the cost of the repair. Save energy and prevent breakdowns. All it takes is one call to the comfort people at Terrell E. Mosley, Lynchburg's oldest and trusted HVAC contractor for 90 years. Visit TerrellEMosley.com.
Hi, Gary the Third here, and I'm excited to say spring has arrived at Gary's Garden Center with great plants and a great selection. Gary's has seasonal color flowers along with vegetables, 60-plus varieties of herbs, perennial flowers, and much more. With friendly service and great advice, we are always happy to answer your questions. Visit Gary's Garden Center at 794 Leesville Road for all your lawn and garden needs. Stop by, say hi, and take a look around.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Quick, direct, to the point. Not even going to do the Fast Five at 5-ish sound effects for today in the Fast Lane. We will get more into this next week in covering the Commonwealth and our chat with John Manson from AsirRed.com, who will chime in on Richie McKay agreeing to a contract extension to be the men's basketball coach or remain the men's basketball coach at Liberty through 2031, 2032. Who knows how the world, much less college athletics or Liberty athletics, will look then, but in essence, it signals an element of stability and ends any speculation, reckless as it might have been, that he'll be gone. Meanwhile, big day for Virginia. Sam Lewis officially announcing he's back at UVA. I think we all kind of knew this might take a while because his perceived market value is not actually what the market said he was worth. And then he and his representatives realized that was the case, and eventually they sign. That's what we're doing in college athletics now, back at Virginia, as well as Kamora Johnson, who withdrew from the transfer portal. She will remain with Coach Roussel, which is a really impressive get for Aaron Roussel in his first year in transitioning from Richmond to UVA. So all of that, spring games are everywhere tomorrow, and because our own TJ Wilkerson is getting married, we will not be at Virginia's spring game, Virginia Tech spring game, or Liberty's spring showcase, since it's not technically being called a spring game. You say that with somewhat tongue planted in cheek, Evan. Why is that? What's the look that you just gave that I have to give a little play-by-play for those that are not watching because we don't have the stream up for you today?
It's just, the spring games are always an interesting time because it's when, you kind of get a feel for what the roster could look like, what the team looks like. But Liberty kind of does it differently than, other colleges. They don't really do a whole big spring thing, which is
nothing from last year's team gave me confidence they knew what was going on at quarterback. You're not going to get elaborate running and passing or RPO concepts from Liberty's game. The thing I would be most curious about when John Manson from AsirRed.com joins us probably next Wednesday in the Fast Lane, no show Tuesday. We have Virginia Tech baseball then. And Bryson Gordon on the morning warm-up as well, 7 to 8 a.m. next week, does it look like you can get a blend of accurate passing from what is believed to be a couple of mobile quarterbacks with Purdy and Henderson? That's the thing I most want. You're going to have a lot less that's shown, if it's not a game setting, from the offensive and defensive lines, which are legitimately questions, but I think you'll probably honestly know more about that in the mid-August, mid-camp, open to the public showcase than you will tomorrow. So take all this with a grain of salt. One more thing, by the way, to note, and we did a TroSwallow.com fast take on this earlier today. We don't have nearly enough time to get into the, morals and ethics, if you will, which has been, a key thing in sports, from the Diana Rossini, Mike Vrabel situation to now the latest with the last two picks of the WNBA draft were A.Z. Fudd and Paige Beckers, both from UConn. I'm clearly hiding under a rock when it comes to all this. Until the PR, I'm not going to call her an expert, but the PR handler interjected to this question that we're about to play. I didn't even have a clue what was going on. But then this unfolded and it went viral on social media, and now it made really a mountain out of a molehill, showing that sometimes PR people aren't really experts as much as they are people that are so obsessed with controlling the narrative that they actually create ones when they don't understand that sometimes it might just get glossed over. Yes.
And I'm wondering if that is still the case, and if so,
All
if y'all
right, here we
talked to
go.
any
Play it
other
again
couples
for
in the
sound bites. Evan is learning his way through our board.
Page announced last year on TikTok that y'all were a couple, and I'm wondering if that is still the case, and if so, if y'all have talked to any other couples in the league about how they negotiate that dynamic as pro teammates.
I understand why you have to ask that question, but we're going to respectfully decline from commenting on our players' personal lives.
You know, if that PR consultant really knew how to properly handle a situation, I have no clue who the PR consultant is for the Dallas Wings. I don't honestly know who any of them are in the WNBA, but I've seen this in NASCAR. I've seen this in other sports. Instead of interjecting there, why don't you anticipate this might be a question that would be asked? Like, do your research and homework and then prepare the player and say, hey, the right response to this, if you're uncomfortable, is to just say, I respect your question, but I like to keep my personal life and our personal life out. It's a fair question, but let's not go there. And at that point, even though it is a reasonable question to ask, because look, again, I'm not here to sit here and say, open gay relationships, marriages. We're not going down that road, but when it's two people on the same staff and they're both involved in literally the game planning of winning, whether it's coaching, playing, some blend or combination, and they're together, then it's a reasonable question, because if you have a bad day relationship-wise, it could literally affect the dynamics of the team, which could affect winning and losing. So it's a reasonable question. You can divert that question and not go that route, but that's where the right PR consultant would have interjected, prepared ahead of time and said, hey, the right way to handle, you're going to probably be asked about this. You can easily say, I choose not to comment on that. Thank you for asking the question. And you can be polite about it, but firm about it and move on. And this would not be a viral sensation that has taken the way of social media the last couple of days. So had to weigh in on that because it's also part of a TroStall.com fast take. We've gotten some feedback on that. We don't have time for that today because when we return, somebody who remembers me from high school is going to be joining us in the fast lane. He has evolved. He has been in coaching. He's been in athletic administration. He is now in a leadership role with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. What is that? How'd the journey get there? Kyle Alexander joining us in studio. We'll discuss that next here in the fast lane.
Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your trusted dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years. With more selection, more value, and more finance options. Plus, your trade is worth more. Shop local and save more with straightforward pricing, plus exceptional service and selection. Your search ends at the Motor Mile. Choose from over 900 quality pre-owned vehicles, plus a massive selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and now Buick. Plus, the used car superstore. 12 new car brands, 900 used vehicles, one amazing buying experience. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got more than any other dealer in the area. The Sheeler Motor Mile delivers choices. Here's the difference. Sheeler owns the finance company and makes getting approved for credit simple and easy on the Motor Mile. Flexible financing options for every budget to get you on the road fast. Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile with a certified friendly staff and no games, no gimmicks. The Sheeler Motor Mile, now in Christiansburg, Radford, and Pulaski. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Your insurance company tells you to go to a certain shop. Once they give you the inflated estimate, you think, better get Maaco. For over 50 years, Maaco has been repairing and painting cars. Maaco is not in contract with insurance companies. They work for you. They don't give insurance companies discounts and rebates you'd never get. At Maaco, you'll get an honest assessment of your repair work by trained, certified professionals. You'll get the choice to pay with insurance or out of pocket, whichever makes sense for you. So if you have an insurance claim, get a second opinion at Maaco on Kemper Street in Lynchburg.
Hi, Gary the Third here, and I'm excited to say spring has arrived at Gary's Garden Center with great plants and a great selection. Gary's has seasonal color flowers along with vegetables, 60-plus varieties of herbs, perennial flowers, and much more. With friendly service and great advice, we are always happy to answer your questions. Visit Gary's Garden Center at 794 Leesville Road for all your lawn and garden needs. Stop by, say hi, and take a look around.
Lunchtime just got an upgrade. Stop by Makadu for our $8.95 weekday special and grab a legendary sandwich at an unbeatable price. Choose from your favorite classics to Coney Island, Betty Bop, Ragtime, or Stogie. Classic sandwiches packed with savory meats and flavors in between fresh bread. Make it a meal by pairing your sandwich with a sidekick, a warm cup of soup, or crispy chips. Great food, cozy vibes, and the best deal in town.
Time to share great food and fun. Just to be there, the only one. Just to be there at Marcadoo's.
We'll see you at the Do's.
If you own a diesel truck or diesel fleet, it's time to go wicked and get serviced for the spring. And when you go wicked, take 25% off your service request for a limited time. Wicked Diesel in Bedford will allow 25% off a transmission flush, coolant flush, oil change, differential service, or AC service. Your choice. Just tell Josh you want that 25% off service special. Download the coupon at wickeddieselva.com. Need diesel repair? Go wicked.
Whether you're facing a tough season or looking for support to overcome life's obstacles, Central Virginia Counseling is here for you. Central Virginia Counseling is accepting new clients at both Lynchburg locations on Wigington Road and Timberlake Road. And telehealth is available anywhere in Virginia. Serving children, teens, and adults, our counselors are equipped with diverse skill sets to help you on your journey. For more information, visit us at centralvirginiacounseling.com.
Don't miss the declaration of deals during our spring clearance at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Buy now with big incentives or low financing, or we'll pay your state sales tax. Your choice. Plus no payments for 90 days. Don't miss the savings, like $6,500 off MSRP on a new Jeep Grand Cherokee. Plus no payments for 90 days at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, 1750 Independence Boulevard in Bedford. MagicCityBedford.com. Stock number BT12821 with approved credit. See dealer for details. Ends 4/30/26.
Step into the fast lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the fast lane.
If I was a super prepared host, then I would have multiple cameras in our Virginia Talk Radio Network studios. But we have one, and I kind of said what I had to do to get him in the studio, and now that he's here, we put the camera on our guest because he's rocking the cool-looking FCA shirt. Kyle Alexander with us here in the fast lane. Kyle, lean in first of all on the microphone. You can get real close to that microphone. You've been knowing me for about 2 decades now.
That is right. Since your freshman year. And I do want to
2000, Y2K. You survived.
That's right. Yes. I appreciate you having me in the studio today, and it's really an honor. But yes, I've known Ed for
great tenacity,
decades.
can make any kind of shot.
Pull that down. Pull back up. Yep, pull that back down. Keep it down. We're coaching Evan. Second time producing in studio today. So you've been knowing me for a while, since 2000. 25 years. That's insane to think about.
It is.
You've evolved, and you've evolved a lot since then. So you're with FCA. That's part of why you're here with us today. We're doing a new thing in the fast lane, Faith Fridays, as often as we can, talking with different people, sports related, but also with the faith-based component that gets woven in there. You've been involved in FCA, to my knowledge, at least since your time at VES. You've also been in coaching. You've been in administrative roles. When did you feel called to go from blending all that together to where you are right now, where you're taking on FCA in more of a full-time venture role?
That is a great question. You're right about being involved with FCA decades ago, because at Virginia Episcopal School, we would do Wednesday FCA meetings, and often Liberty University or college athletes would come and they'd share with the students. And so that kind of occurred. And then through the years, just having whatever team I was part of or school I was part of, doing team huddles through using FCA. But actually, a friend of ours, Matt Klein, coaching basketball, I was struggling with my leukemia. I was diagnosed in 2019, and it was hard. Life was hard, and your strength fails you and so forth. And he really made it a point to be engaged with his basketball team at New Covenant Schools that went on, I want to state championship. Just meeting with them and hanging out with the guys. And I kind of saw this unique role of relationships that can occur through that. And then kind of followed him over to his new job, his new school, and done the FCA role with him for the last 2 years.
It's cool to see you in the game. I've kept up with Matt, obviously, from New Covenant. Now he's the boys basketball coach at LCA, and see him around in the community. Kids are of similar age. His and Lindsay's too, and mine. I don't know if he's listening now. I think he's down at Disney World, by the way. Social media stalking is a powerful tool. You can figure that out. But you've been involved in this for so long. Where did the passion for blending faith and athletics originate for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I grew up in South Central Michigan in a very unchurched home, and really didn't know anything about the Bible or having a relationship with God. And sports was my thing. That's what made me get to class, stay in school. And my coaches were my mentors and father figures. And post high school, I had a rough, teenage years, I would say. Had some trouble and wasn't a great student. And someone told me how I could know Jesus, and it explained the plan of salvation. I mentioned I was a sinner. Romans, I didn't argue with that. I saw that in my life. And I became a Christian right out of high school and ended up ultimately walking on at Liberty's football team in the late 70s.
Wow. I learned something new every day. I've even read your letter of why the FCA, and it wasn't included in that. You walked on at Liberty back in the 70s.
I did.
And then you kept going from that to coaching. Why did you know once you started getting involved in FCA, walking on at Liberty, strengthening your relationship with Christ, that you were going to want to get into a spot where you could give back, which I guess started with coaching, but has transcended over to administrative and FCA involvement as well?
I think so. Yes. Last night we had an FCA event at Lincoln Middle School, and I look out those young people competing and having fun and all the energy they have. And I realize they're probably, in many of them cases like me, struggles, difficulties at home, maybe struggling at school, and having an identity with Christ and having purpose that comes through that relationship. I learn makes all the difference. And so I think I've always kind of looked at athletes and tried to see the bigger picture beyond just the scoreboard. Now, people are listening and say, well, wait a second, didn't you after that game, or didn't you practice do this? And yes, competitors sometimes will go a little too far and cross the line. But I do think that, God changing my life and then having an eternal perspective certainly played a role in, this journey.
Was that heightened when you started, you and your wife had kids? You've got 3 boys. They've all been into sports, all been into football, all into coaching at different levels as well. Did that shape your desire to be involved even more in FCA and giving them a haven where they could relate with not just you, but your dad? So they probably want to they need to relate to other people that can offer the similar guidance that you want, but just the value of hearing it from a different voice.
When my boys were in sports, it was interesting, maybe because I had the roles within the school. I kind of directed them and my own, coaching and so forth and interest, so we could run a parallel track. And I was always either on staff or their AD at the school or their head coach. And much of the journey really did center around kind of having an influence on them and having a mentoring role. So having your own children, it changes things. And the exciting thing has been watching them as men now be leaders amongst their teams and at their schools. And it's just a proud dad moment when I get to experience that.
Kyle Alexander with us here in the Fast Lane. He's in the studio. He's with FCA. I don't think I even said this in the letter. What's your role with FC? I know you're involved. I know you're an ambassador for it. What are you doing for FCA? I feel terrible not really knowing it, but I think of you, I think of FCA, but I don't really quite know the role.
Okay, so for a number of years, volunteer, and that was just fine with that. And then having left teaching and coaching about a little over a year ago, I was really like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I stayed with the FCA with Coach Klein and his basketball teams, and was just using my CDL, my commercial driver's license, and driving bus because I'm not a guy that wants to stay home. And the idea of the FCA kind of being bigger happened when a guy named Tim Hill, who's the area director of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, approaches me about me becoming on staff. And he pitched that to me and cast out a vision there because I've got connection with local schools and so forth that would benefit me in trying to grow a ministry. So now moving from a volunteer to staff position, big difference is support raising. The big difference between just the volunteer. Maybe I'm spending more time with it now, yes, but I've started the support raising. And then this spring, I think I'm probably more engaged with schools, 3 or 4 different schools and different teams at each school. But I hope by fall, maybe more of a settled in with what that looks like and going in depth. I don't want to just see a team every once a week or every couple of weeks, but I do want to get to know the athletes and the coaches and support them. So I think that's real important. I'm relational. So yeah.
Kyle Alexander from FCA is with us here in studio. Tough love. Some people think, if you're tough, you can't be a believer, or love. And if you love, you can't be tough. How important is FCA in showing adults who are the mentors, as well as the students who are learning and the student athletes who are learning, that you can blend the tough and the love together? And that's when you can really be a good ambassador to Christ.
Wow. I love that question. So just this week, I was at a lacrosse game, high school lacrosse game, boys lacrosse. Great game, very competitive game. It went way down to the final minutes of the game. Afterwards, I watched the teams go through the handshake line, and then they went to center field. I watched them as they circled around the center field. And a player, I know him well, great kid, I've coached him and had him in class, gets in the center of that. His team had just lost, and he prays. And it brought a tear to my eye to see this kid. His faith is more important than that final score. Having the Christian fellowship was more important than the final score. Having a loving brother kind of attitude, not just towards his teammates, but his opponents. And, I think that you've seen that even at the university level, where you'll see the great competition and they're doing everything they can to win. But at the end of the day, folks will come together, or a number of the folks on the teams will come together and they'll have fellowship and pray. Man, that is where it should be. And the idea of hating your opponent and wishing the worst for them, and not getting past that, we're all humans and brothers, and as Christians, we should be loving one another. But thank you for that question.
Well, it's something that's popped up because I'm a dad of 2 boys, not 3. So no sympathy from you because you raised 3 of them, although I've got twins. But you think about things through that perspective. What does it mean to you as well? Kyle Alexander for FCA is with us here. All 3 of your sons are in coaching. All 3 of your sons seem like they're FCA alums locally, but have been able to take that and incorporate that in their new coaching professions and locations in Virginia, North Carolina, and Tennessee.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I guess North Carolina, Georgia kind of blended together.
Tennessee.
Yes.
Tennessee, Georgia.
Tennessee, Virginia, and
then
Georgia.
Virginia, yes.
But Georgia, but playing in North Carolina.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yes. Yeah, I'd love to go to their games or even practices. I'll usually, when I visit them, I try to get there so I can watch, them at work. And our youngest son, who's at Raven Gap in the Coochie School in Georgia, I thought he was a little too tough on this lineman who's got offers, but he's only a sophomore, just a little puppy, and he was tough on him.
By offers, you mean like high-level Division I offers?
Oh, yeah, Power 4 offers. And I talked to him afterwards. I think you were too tough on him. And he goes, no, he needs that. He knows I love him. I talked to him afterwards. I need to do that for him because he wants to play college football and he needs this. So saw that, yeah, my younger son, he's tough and demanding, and yet he can express his love. And I will say for my boys, when, that one was Daniel, he had a German athlete who had Division I powerful offers. There's ACL his junior year, and brought him to tears. He loved his player that much that it bothered him. That he lost his season and so forth. And so, yeah, it means a lot to see my boys pouring into young men, or one son has 3 daughters. So he's kind of, other than football, coaches women's sports, and that's good, right? And see him care about the athletes past the field or court.
Did your wife have a tough time with all the football and the faith and the until she then saw 3 boys and they all followed a very similar trajectory and path to you, Coach Alexander?
She grew up in a home with sisters and kind of a quiet home and so forth.
Culture shock.
And it was, our house was loud and tackle football in the living room. And it was, very boy-like. And, but she has been a great supporter of them, and she'll still say, "What's that?" or "What happened there?" Doesn't quite understand the games, but she's very proud of them for the roles they play in the lives of young people.
Kyle Alexander with us here in the Fast Lane from FCA. Kyle, last one for you, blended together. What do people need to know about our local FCA and how they can be supportive of that?
Hey, that's a great question. Our FCA here in the greater Lynchburg area is involved with colleges, high schools, and even in middle schools. Like I mentioned, a middle school track meet last night. And so if you go to Greater Lynchburg FCA, you'll find the page will come up and you can see all the different folks that are involved. There's a team of people. There's an FCA hockey here in Lynchburg where these hockey guys coming from around the country living in Lynchburg. And that's what they practice up at Liberty's gorgeous hockey rink there, and then play tournaments. And so these kids are doing FCA online learning and hockey. Which, that hockey has its own culture there. But you scroll down if you click meet our team, and you got to go all the way to the bottom to find me. But I'm there, and you can find my link.
Well, we're excited for it. We get to see your journey and follow it. We've put it out on social media. We'll do it again at Fast Lane Ed Lane on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, how you can support Kyle Alexander and FCA in the Central Virginia area and the Lynchburg, Virginia area, it's a great cause. It gets athletes linked up with fellow athletes. It gives them a path to Christ to still be competitive, and yet surrounding them with a real supportive community, both from a competition side and a faith side, which can transcend beyond just their time playing and help shape them into great contributors to society, which, at the end of the day, that's a big part of what sports is about, Kyle, for so much of us. Is there's a small percentage, you've been around some of them, your kids have, that have a chance to get paid for their talents now at D1 football. But, the majority of us, it's the lessons you learn that you can carry over afterwards.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Creating good citizens happens in the way we live life. And I think sports is a tremendous teacher of life. I know our oldest son would always tell his players, football mirrors life. And, you have bad days, you have setbacks, and you lose games, you miss plays, or sometimes there's injuries. Guess what? That's going to happen in life. We're going to have struggles. And I mentioned my getting diagnosed with leukemia, and I went downhill pretty quickly, and medication was, had its side effects. And I went from a full-time athletic director and coaching and putting in very long hours and loving it. I never thought of it as work, to, going to work in the morning was hard, or staying more than just a few hours. And so God was good, because through that struggle, I think I grew, and learned to rely on other strengths. And some of those are the relationships we're talking about, and the faith in Jesus, and trusting him, walking with him, even through difficult times. And just almost a year ago, I went off my medication because of the side effects. It's unbelievable, off the meds, and would start checking my blood work every few weeks, checking it, and the blood work didn't worsen, it improved. Within a couple months, I had normal blood work for the first time in 6 years, and it has stayed there. So now my energy is up, right? And so I got this energy back in my 60s and able to do things. And God opened up the FCA door. But yeah, I think, one thing I kind of went through my mind, I used to tell my athletes, embrace the struggle, embrace the struggle, embrace the struggle, And then I would be driving to work with my leukemia, and I'd say, struggle. I was telling myself the same advice I'd given the athletes.
Self-pep talk. They're powerful. Kyle Alexander with us in the studio. Kyle, we could go on forever. We'll have to get you back here in the fast lane. Thank you so much, though, for giving us a chance to introduce you and the work you're doing with FCA to our audiences. We love to support that. We appreciate your time, and certainly praying that that things continue to go well on a path where you can make a positive impact as you're already doing.
Thank you so much, Ed. And I'm so proud of you, where I've seen you come through the years and grow into a fine young man, a husband and father, and very proud of you.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Kyle Alexander with us here in the fast lane. That does it for us today. We'll sign off for now. We'll kick it over to Pitt and Virginia Tech baseball. We've got all 3 games this weekend. We'll have spring football, whatever you want to call that game, or it's actually technically being played like a game in Blacksburg tomorrow. We will have some NBA and NHL playoff action over the weekend as well. Stay tuned. Fast Lane, Ed Lane on our socials. We will have the graphics up there in VTR and sports as well. For Evan, for Kyle, I'm Ed. Now on to the great Evan Hughes in Virginia Tech baseball.
Series opener tonight, the first of 3 games at beautiful English Field. This evening, 2 teams searching for wins to help bolster